Crisis alert. Immigration strains colleges as media reacts to Pierre's political return. Across Canada, post-secondary institutions are facing a mounting crisis that has quietly escalated for years, but is now impossible to ignore. Colleges and universities are bursting at the seams, grappling with record-breaking international student enrollments that far outpace their physical and administrative capacity. This surge in immigration-linked education revenue has become a double-edged sword. While it brought vital funds, it also created enormous pressure on housing, classroom space, and faculty workloads. At the same time, conservative leader Pierre Poilievre's recent return to political prominence has stoked fresh debate, stirring both hope and controversy about how the country should handle immigration and education moving forward. For many years, international students were seen as a financial lifeline for Canadian colleges, especially as provincial funding for post-secondary education dwindled. These students pay significantly higher tuition fees, which helped universities and colleges fill gaps left by government cuts. But now, the system is stretched dangerously thin. Institutions in Ontario, British Columbia, and Quebec in particular have accepted far more students than their campuses can properly support. The consequences are deeply human. Many students find themselves crammed into overcrowded dorms or forced to rent far from campus in unsafe or unaffordable neighborhoods. There are heartbreaking stories of learners relying on food banks or living out of their cars. These pressures have also taken a toll on staff and instructors, many of whom are overwhelmed by class sizes and limited resources. Prime Minister Mark Carney, who took office after the April 2025 snap election, promised a more sustainable immigration policy to better align numbers with real-world capacity. His government has introduced measures to cap international study permits and tighten regulations on private career colleges, aiming to improve quality and reduce abuses. Yet, these policies came too late to prevent the ripple effects of years of rapid growth. Colleges that built their budgets on international tuition are now forced to make painful program cuts and lay off staff, leaving both Canadian and international students scrambling for support and certainty. Poilievre's political comeback has dramatically amplified the public conversation. After a period of relative quiet, the Conservative leader is forcefully criticizing the Liberal government's handling of immigration and education, blaming it for rising costs, housing shortages, and crumbling campus conditions. His rhetoric resonates with many Canadians who feel the system is broken, yet it also raises concerns about the risk of turning a complex challenge into a political wedge. While Poilievre's supporters applaud his focus on accountability and practical governance, opponents warn that his tough stance could fuel division and undermine the contributions of international students. Media coverage has captured this tension vividly. Some outlets emphasize immigration's role in fueling college overcrowding, painting a picture of government neglect and mismanagement. Others caution against blaming international students, highlighting their essential contributions to the Canadian economy and cultural fabric. Faculty unions, student groups, and university leaders are increasingly vocal, calling for urgent action to address the systemic issues. Expanded housing, increased staffing, improved mental health services, and more thoughtful immigration targets. They argue the crisis reflects decades of underinvestment and policy disconnects that demand comprehensive solutions. On campus, the impact is palpable. In cities like Brampton, Surrey, and Montreal, student housing shortages have become acute, with many learners struggling to find safe, affordable places to live. The stress is compounded by rising tuition costs and fees that many cannot shoulder. Temporary instructors report crushing workloads, often juggling multiple classes without the support needed to provide quality education. The strain on mental health resources has reached critical levels, with counseling centers overwhelmed and wait times extending for weeks or months. Many students say they feel lost in a system stretched too thin to meet their needs. The situation is particularly severe in Ontario, where some colleges have partnered with private career institutions to skirt provincial enrollment limits. This has resulted in thousands of students being admitted without adequate infrastructure or academic oversight. Media investigations have uncovered overcrowded lecture halls, insufficient lab spaces, and concerns about academic quality and integrity. Canadian students now find themselves competing with international peers not just for classes, but for the essential services that make academic success possible. At the federal level, messaging from Carney's government has been inconsistent. While pledging to maintain Canada's position as a global leader in higher education, the government has simultaneously imposed enrollment caps without committing to funding the necessary supports campuses desperately need. Students and faculty alike express frustration at the lack of clear, coordinated plans to ensure no one is left behind. For many, the disconnect between political promises and on-the-ground realities is growing too wide to ignore. Poilievre's re-emergence sharpens these divides. He has called for parliamentary investigations into what he describes as reckless governance and a failure to safeguard Canada's academic institutions. His critics warn that his tough talk risks alienating immigrant communities and fostering division, but his supporters argue that bold leadership is precisely what's needed to correct the course. The debate now centers on how to balance Canada's historic openness with the practical demands of sustaining high-quality education for all. The media plays a complicated and pivotal role. While stories highlighting overcrowding and mental health crises have broken through to the mainstream, there remains a challenge to move beyond simplistic narratives. The crisis is a multifaceted one, rooted in policy, funding, social issues, and global migration trends. What's clear is that the conversation is no longer confined to university boardrooms or government offices. It's part of everyday life for millions of Canadians and newcomers alike. At its core, this crisis is about trust in Canada's institutions, in its leaders, and in the promises made to students who choose Canada as their home away from home. Thousands came seeking education, opportunity, and security. Instead, many find themselves navigating a landscape of uncertainty, stretched resources, and political battles that leave them caught in the crossfire. Canada's colleges and universities today symbolize a nation at a critical crossroads. The decisions made now about immigration levels, funding priorities, and institutional support will ripple far beyond classrooms, shaping the country's social fabric and economic future. Leadership, empathy, and transparency are essential if Canada is to live up to its reputation as a welcoming, innovative, and fair society. The stakes could not be higher, and the eyes of the nation and the world are watching closely.